been conscripted like most men, though the draft in his case was not into the army. When in the spring of '42 the law school dean, a former New Dealer named Harold Gardner, had taken the job of general counsel at the Treasury Department, he had taken a handful of newly minted lawyers with him, including Warburg. "Don't be ridiculous," the dean had said to Warburg, swatting away his initial demurral. Warburg had already filed enlistment papers effective at the term's end, itching to join the fight. But Gardner was insistent. "Washington is where your country needs you, David." Warburg still refused, but Gardner chided him. As a lawyer in uniform, Warburg would never see service overseas in any case. He'd be a JAG mandarin, bringing acne-faced AWOLs to court-martial at Fort McClellan in Alabama or someplace worse. In fact, Gardner had promised to see to it. And so Warburg had joined the fray in Washington, becoming one of the samurai bureaucrats in the thick of the vast legislative reinvention of federal finances made necessary by the explosion of war spending. The rolling congressional authorizations for the war bond program was Warburg's particular portfolio. As it turned out, he'd already been central to the raising of more than $500 million in war funding, which helped keep inflation down and the war economy booming. Not bad service, that. But alas, judging by the markers on Warburg's wall map, Hitler wasn't as yet much hindered. At the Treasury Secretary's reception area, a primly dressed woman promptly showed Warburg into the ornate inner office. Harold Gardner was there, sitting with Morgenthau in matched leather-wing chairs in an alcove where one large Palladian window overlooked the White House. There was a clear view of the president's mansion, because only the faintest pale lime of early buds tempered the stark black and white branches of the late winter trees. A third man was seated on an adjacent sofa. The three men came to their feet at Warburg's arrival. Henry Morgenthau, Jr., a slim figure whose tanned baldness struck an elegant fashion note, was nearly as tall as Warburg. Yet Gardner was the first to stretch out his hand, putting his responsibility for this meeting on display. He let his affection for Warburg show, saying as he turned to Morgenthau, "David was the best we had in New Haven." But before the secretary could reply or even grasp Warburg's hand, his desk buzzer sounded, and he went to the telephone. "Friendly greetings to you, Felix," Morgenthau said grandly into the mouthpiece. Gardner and the other man resumed their seats, but Warburg remained standing as if holding a hat. "Thanks for calling back," Morgenthau said. "Too early? Of course not. I've been at my desk for an hour, same as you." Morgenthau listened, then laughed. "How is Frida?" He paused, then added, "Give her our love." There would be a performance aspect to this conversation. "The reason I called, I have one of your young relations here with me right now." Pause. "That's right, I'm about to brief him on the job I'm giving him. A very important job, and I wanted you to be the first to know. Yes, in Rome. Once liberation comes." Listening, Warburg thought, "Whoa, what's this?" He exchanged a quick glance with Gardner, catching his all but imperceptible nod. Rome? Gardner had insisted more than once that Warburg was indispensable on Pennsylvania Avenue with 3 new bills a month coming off his desk. "The Appropriations Committee," Gardner had barked repeatedly, "is clay on your potter's wheel, can't do without you." "The War Refugee Board," Morgenthau was saying. "My War Refugee Board. Once Mark Clark captures it, Rome will be the nerve center and the escape hatch both. And your young man will run things." Warburg took this in with an apparent calm, but it was shocking news. The absolute opposite, he realized at once, of what Janet was hoping for. War refugees. Everyone in Treasury was aware of Morgenthau's having badgered Roosevelt into long overdue action on refugee relief, such as it was. Refugee was a generic euphemism, since those in the know, certainly including Warburg, whose gaze drifted to his wall map dozens of times a day, understood full well that the urgency applied to Hitler's particular target, Jews. For months, Morgenthau had been sounding death camp alarms inside the government, finally forcing Roosevelt's hand by threatening to go public with the still secret cables coming in from Geneva. Elsewhere in Washington, and even in certain hallways at Treasury, the War Refugee Board was seen as the product of a Jew's special pleading for Jews. In Warburg's own shuttling between Treasury and Capitol.